Next item on the agenda refers to acknowledging receipt of the approval of Plan Con E from Pennsylvania Department of Education. This is a approval related to our design development, design for Welsh Valley Middle School. So we'll have to formally acknowledge that in the as a board agenda item on Monday.
So no questions there, Suba? No. All right, Jerry's going to get here and we're going to be all done.
Okay, for the next update on our elementary and middle school enrollment projects, I'd like to ask Danielle Hoffer to come forward along with Jim. Our construction manager was not able to be here today, so these folks are filling in. Those turned on?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
All right, go to the next slide. This is the update for the Facilities Committee. This is a slide that you've seen before. The adjustments that that are notable on this slide with Ballackinman Middle School, the current estimate for the Phase 2 addition is included in here, and that was actually estimated in October, the end of October, and it's brought the estimate up about $70,000. The original approved budget was based on conceptual design drawings, and now we're starting to really get into a lot of the detailing of it. So we're continuing to look at ways to reduce the overall cost of that project. The other adjustments are on the Welsh Valley and Gladwin projects, where we've converted those projects to standard construction methodology. Those are estimates right now. We have the Gladwin bids coming in next week on November 20th.
Correct.
So you'll have actual numbers to look at the December report. So looking at the bottom line, we're under budget about $226,000. Now, if we go to the next slide, you'll see that what Reynolds has been carrying in the Welsh Valley construction project budget is the added scope. And if you look at the bottom line, there's $585,000 worth of added scope, meaning that it was something that's been identified after the board approved the budget, and that included the loading dock expansion as well as the boiler replacement job. That was something that was going to be started before the project, and it was originally a scope item that was going to be part of the capital improvement project budget, and now we're carrying it as a number as part of this project. It will be bid separately, meaning the boiler replacement project, and if you take those two costs out of the project budget, were $811,000 plus under budget. Now, what that's going to allow us to do as we receive the bids, especially with Welsh Valley, we're going to be developing a list of alternates that you'll have the availability to select based on where we are with the budgets when the bids actually come in, because you'll have real numbers to work with it at that time, since all the other projects will have been bid by that time.
I just want to highlight, excuse me, in the past, each project has been viewed individually, not as a total package.
Right.
And we've taken pride on each project has, whether it's been above or below budget. So, I mean, looking at the numbers here, 2 out of the 4
You're up and down, yeah.
are underwater.
Yep.
And so the fact that 2 others may generate a say that we're we're over the budget on 2. Sorry. That when you take it as a package of 4, that now we have this extra money. I mean, to me, it doesn't mean that you just go spending extra money. I have one more meeting, but it doesn't mean that you just go ahead and spend the money because one project is more favorable and you can transfer money from this project to the other. Each project should be viewed independently, and then at the end of the project, determine whether that one was under or over. And right now, we're over budget 2, and that's a little disconcerting, as we've spoken about in the past.
Right. Okay, next slide. So let's just kind of go over briefly all the projects. The 2 modular projects at Glenside and Welsh Valley, both are in the punch list work and closeout phase. As far as the change order exposure, we're under on 1, we're over on Welsh Valley. largely due to the acceleration costs associated with that project. So we're continuing to negotiate with the contractor to get those costs down as far as possible. And with the renovations
Excuse
of
me,
the... Go
is
ahead.
is that part of this over budget number on the previous slide? The fact that the modulars?
It is, but as we pointed out in earlier meetings, the real place where we missed on estimates was in soft costs.
Right, right. But even so, my question is whether that's incorporated in the previous number, and the answer is yes to that.
Right, let me just, this is the status of the construction contingency, and you can see the second column over, which is the Welsh Valley Modular. That's where we've exceeded the allocated contingency. And so we're not finished negotiating that change order for the acceleration. We're not happy with the results that we got. So, and that is incorporated in the overall numbers.
Right, and your point is that it's not a big enough number the other number is a much larger number, and so it will have less of effect on the overall total, but I just wanted to make sure that it was included.
It is included.
Just refresh my memory, what's the threshold where you go from, where the costs, the soft costs are greater? Is there a point, the size of a project obviously smaller, therefore the soft costs are going to be greater? What's the dollar amount of a project where the higher soft costs kick in or drop off, whatever?
Well, we're kind of finding that out because the projects, for instance, Gladwin and Penn Valley, which were $2 or $3 million, those have the higher soft costs. When you get up over $10 million, then they start to go down, respectively, I would say.
So Pat, when you did the estimates for the two scenarios for the high school, Howard and Lower Merion, because one was above 10 million and one's below, was there a different soft cost percentage applied in arriving at the estimates for those two projects? The 10 million is a threshold where soft costs start to go down?
Soft
Or was the
threshold.
same percentage used for both?
No, a much higher percentage was used, and it was used because the different options we looked at were in the $2 to $7+ million range at Harrison, and at Lower Merion it was in the $2.5 to $4.6 range. So used much higher ones.
I forgot the part of Howard was for this build. The total cost if Howard is utilized, it involves, it's not 10 million at Howard, it's 7 million, I guess 3 million here.
The reason I did that is because
That's fine. I thought it was a total of 10 because it's two separate projects.
Okay, so phase 1 and 2, which we call for the renovations and the new administration and the new classrooms, that punch work is continuing. There's some select work that's going to occur over the winter break, which has to do with data. And we are working on the final alarm inspection, and did we get approval yet?
I haven't heard. I know
Okay.
they wanted to do that work.
This-
Actually, it's scheduled for this evening.
Okay,
They're going to come back for the third try at trying to get certification on their additional fire alarm work.
and once we get that, then we can schedule the certificate of occupancy, hopefully this week. This is a photograph of the conversion of the old administration area to classrooms.
I'm sorry, can I just ask a clarification? So the certificate of occupancy is only for that area, correct?
Mhm.
But the fire alarm work, is it only for that area, or is the fire alarm in the building not?
The fire alarm in the building is functional.
Okay.
They have to do a recertification of the entire building. When they did the testing on Tuesday evening, they found a device that wasn't working in the lobby outside the library that had to do with wires that the contractor shorted while he was working elsewhere. And at the same time, they found a strobe that was non-functional in the library. That's the responsibility of operations, and I put a work order in, and we're going to get that repaired. But it is a situation where when they do work on it, they have to recertify the entire system.
Aren't there annual recertifications anyway? Don't we have annual recertifications per the township or some other state code?
We have
That-
tests that are required to be done. We have tests that are required to be done.
And is the certification much different from the test?
I don't know. I know that the reason they're doing this is because we have made modifications to the building and we've got a new arrangement of devices.
Okay, so this is a photograph of the conversion of the original administration area to classroom. The door that you see on the right-hand side goes out to the lobby going into the library, and those two windows have views into the library. A portion of this floor is actually wood, so the former finished material on that floor was carpet, and we've just replaced the carpet. And then this is the photograph of the classrooms down on the same level as the corridor, where the assistant principal, I believe, and some secretaries were. So this is a conversion of a couple of classrooms. Have anything to add? And that's vinyl tile flooring. Okay, so for Penn Valley, let's see what's changed on this one. The initial schedule has been received and reviewed by the contractor. Work on the site is actually going to begin next week, so you're going to start to see some activity on the site. Neighborhood update letter is being issued this week. The team has reviewed the site utilization with the building administrations, which has been dictated to the contractors. And the team is in the process of gathering shop drawings and submittals required for the project as we start to move the project forward with the approval of the off-site modular units. Gladwin, like I said before, the redesign using conventional construction is out to bid right now. The bids are due next week on Wednesday. I think the final addendum goes out this Friday. The board award is scheduled for your December 16th meeting. This rebid will allow for occupancy by December 2014. It's going to add about $28,000 of additional costs for extending the lease of the temporary classrooms. Other than that, the rebid costs are minor. And the estimate for the construction cost has been reduced, as I showed on the previous slide, using the conventional construction and improved competition. We have a lot of contractors that are on the bid list, so we're looking forward to the bids coming in. And like I said, in December, at your meeting there, you'll actually see the actual cost versus the estimated cost at that point in time. Well,
The differential will be versus what we had budgeted.
that's on that previous slide. Hold on. Yeah, you weren't here for that.
No, he's asking,
For
all right.
Gladwin. The approved budget was $3,003,823, and as you see there, and the current estimate that was estimated in September is just over 3.3.
Now, this includes the soft costs. As we pointed out earlier, the problems with these budgets on these projects relate to soft cost estimates.
What was your question in relation to the modular? Yeah.
What we expect with the modular versus the stick built.
Do you have the, oh. Do you have the breakout?
I could tell you from last month's estimate, and this again is re-estimating based on
Conventional.
the conventional construction, it decreased, the construction estimate decreased by roughly $80,000.
So that 350 reflects that?
Yes.
So a month ago, it was 430, now if it comes near where you project currently, it was 80 less in the whole month there.
Correct. Last month, it was 433.
And that's a bid versus an actual, versus an estimate, correct? Correct? So once we get the Gladwin bids in, then we'll have a bid versus a bid and see how much we actually save by. No. Right now, it's bid versus estimate. The bid was for the modular.
Oh, you mean bid, yeah, of course.
That's an actual bid number, and this is an estimated number. Once we get the bids, we'll be able to compare the bid number, the two different bid numbers.
The bid number to the budgeted number.
Just out of curiosity, by delaying accepting a bid, because we didn't accept the ones that were the modulars, do we then have to rent those other modular units for a longer
Can you go to
period?
that slide again? Just reiterate.
I don't have any
Yes.
materials, so.
Yeah, if you look at the fourth bullet point there, the cost for the extended leasing of those temporary classrooms adds about 28,000 to the project.
So it's
cost.
80,000 saving
Less
in
28.
construction,
Yeah.
so it's
Right.
52,000.
Right, so you have
So if
some savings. But we'll know better when the bids come in, see how
So it
much
could be higher.
reaction. Could be. Hopefully, we're going into a good bidding market. All right, Welsh Valley?
Where is each electric gun?
Keep that cloud over here.
Yeah. All right, so the renovations and additions to Welsh Valley, we're in the design development phase using the conventional construction for the proposed addition or additions. We are submitting our preliminary plans for land development, which is going to occur next week for the township meeting in January. Now, this has changed after our meeting yesterday, Wednesday, yeah. We have some additional items that have been requested at the tentative sketch plan having to do with the sidewalk. They'd like to see some options. So in order to get all that included into his submission, he doesn't think he's going to be able to make it by the end of November, which means he's probably going to do a submission in December, which will jump this. Probably we won't be seen by the township until February. We don't think that's going to impact our schedule, but this is just something that came up yesterday. We are looking to have another Penn Valley Civic meeting, hopefully in December, again, to give them an update on the Welsh Valley project. One of the specific things that we want to talk to them about is construction phasing, not only for the building, for the site. Figured the neighbors would be interested in seeing that information. We are still projecting to bid this in March, or in, is it March? And for the board award in March anyway.
Right.
And that's based on our
Should
accelerator.
meeting delayed till February?
Pardon
Right,
me?
these can proceed concurrently as long as, forgot the exact word, we can't award anything until we have all the municipal approvals.
You can't sign contracts until you have all the
Right.
approvals
The
in
delay
hand.
said January 2014 gets pushed into February, but you
Correct.
think it'll matter.
Right,
Correct.
Right.
And how about time for appeal?
I'm sorry.
How about time for appeal, the 30-day appeal, if it's opposed? Is that built into the schedule?
Well, then we would need to postpone the bids.
You're talking about a bid appeal?
No,
Appeal of the township approval.
Oh, right, then we would have to do that. I don't know. That's a good question we should research.
Should we build that in there? We're not
Right.
awarding it.
Right.
Jerry, use your microphone.
Oh, it's big, oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry about that.
So far, you haven't said anything worth. Interesting, definitely call it to the law.
So we'll take a look at that.
So the bidding and the plan submission to the township can run concurrently. So the delay of the January 2014 Township Land Development meeting won't impact the schedule for the March bid. I'm sorry, that's a bid award. When would you put it out for bid? In February?
January.
In January, okay. So we just have to make sure that we allow for the appeal period from the land development approval, so that we're not awarding a bid to somebody when we don't have approval, assuming it gets
Absolutely.
appealed.
Right, absolutely. All right, we're going to be, in the following months, we're going to be coming to you with a list of alternates, and so that you have a good idea, once we bid the project, the things that are going to be itemized as far as alternates for selection and review in determining how much money you want to spend in the project. And that's going to include, if you remember, the Phase 2 Ballycoote Middle School Storage Addition. We're going to be breaking that out as an alternate to Welsh Valley. Again, getting that economies of scale as much
Right,
as we
but
can.
it has its own budget.
Right. That's outside of the numbers that you've been seeing. The loading dock upgrades, the additional canopies in the interior courtyard extending off of the campus canopies to Building E and Building F. And then, of course, the univentilator and chiller upgrades that we've been talking about.
In terms of phasing and staging at Welsh Valley, will we be able to use some of the St. Justin property, former St. Justin property to help with
Oh,
that?
yeah, absolutely.
We're relying extensively on use of that property.
Perfect.
Yeah.
The portions, not the wooded portion, but the portions that are developed.
You mentioned sidewalk earlier. What sidewalks are you talking about?
The sidewalk along Haggeys Ford Road from the north side of our property, the very, very end of our property, down to like where the bus loop is.
So
How
we're
many-
on the gymnasium side of Welsh Valley.
Right.
And we have a sidewalk that runs from the bus loop in front of the gym up to about the intersection of Flat Rock Road and
Yes.
Haggeys Ford. They want us to look at options for extending our sidewalk along Haggeys Ford from that point north to the end of our property.
They, commissioners?
The township, right. I mean, this is strongly, I mean, the
Recommended.
condition of approval is for us to examine the options, but I know there's a lot of support for us doing this.
So he's preparing 4 options for
Would the
review.
township pay for the sidewalks if we design them?
I don't think so.
Okay, thanks.
It's a good idea.
And finally, the boiler project is going to be bid separately. You'll see that number outside of the construction project for Welsh Valley.
And Jerry, you had a question last month about that. We just yesterday discovered that we can get the kind of boiler equipment that we're using and we prefer, we can get that on state contract. So we may in fact bid out and award an installation where the equipment is purchased separately by the district and provided to the contractor.
Great, thanks.
And that number is in the Welsh Valley numbers, correct, that you presented prior?
Yeah, the boiler replacement?
Right
job?
now it is. Right now it is.
But it's at 588?
It's part of that 588.
Right.
Next one.
Okay, so this number right here includes the cost of the boilers, the estimated cost, and the estimated cost of the loading dock.
Right.
This one does not. Okay? We pulled it out, and those two things added together are 585. So they will be, well, the boiler will be bid separately. So that's more or less taken away from this budget. But then the loading dock would be one of those alternates that would be available for us to consider, along with the canopy extension, the green roof, and the additional HVAC work.
So in subsequent meetings, what we're going to show you is the approved budget that you approved last year. And the second column is going to be the same type of program and scope that was identified in that budget will be identified in the current estimate and bids line item, so that when you see the bids come in, anything outside that scope will be identified in alternates. Okay? Good. And then you can select based on where your comfort level is with the numbers. Okay, this is a diagram you've seen before with the overall project budget.
Schedule.
I'm sorry. And Penn Valley is the same. Gladwin is adjusted based on now the rebid project, so that's pushed out a little bit.
Hey, Pat, is there an expectation that the pricing will be more favorable if it goes out now as opposed to being bid separately somewhere down the road? Are there synergies that are going to be realized?
Are you referring to the alternates?
Yeah, I'm talking about I'm sorry.
Oh, definitely, definitely. We'll see, we'll see we'll be capturing all the overhead costs, the general conditions costs. So I would say yes.
Just a quick question, going back a little bit. You don't have to go back in the slides. The modular project that we had proposed previously, if we went out again on the modular, with a modular project, do you think we get more activity, or do you think it would be the same as we had the first time out?
I think it'd be the same.
Really? There are just not enough contractors doing it out there to create competition?
Well, it's interesting to see how many more bidders that we got when we decided to go out for Gladwin. Not using the off-site construction, using conventional construction. We reached out to those contractors and more contractors to say, listen, this isn't going to be off-site construction now, this is going to be conventional construction. It gives the other primes a lot more latitude because they have a lot more work associated with their work, because the modular contract had all the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing associated with that scope, and in the building was outside of their realm. So it really generates a lot more interest in the bidding market with the contractors.
And is it that there are so few modular contractors out there that there's no competition? What's it a function of? I mean, if there were 50 modular contractors, you'd have the competition amongst the modular contractors. Is it just there are so few? Is we didn't alert the market well enough? Why is it that there's no competition amongst those that build modular?
Well, it isn't something that I've seen on all the projects that we've done with offsite construction. So
Does our geographic area play a part into this?
it may, you know, you're getting closer to Philadelphia, you're getting closer to the unions, you're getting closer. That may have something to do with it.
And certainly the contractors in this area are not as familiar with it, and so that created uncertainty.
Okay.
I don't know that these schedules have changed that much since the last time
No,
seen
they
them.
have not. They have not. Again, we're looking at the storage addition at Ballackinwood occurring in the summer. Again, as we've mentioned, it'll be part of the contract that's awarded for Welsh Valley.
Yeah.
And then we're looking at awarding the contract for Welsh Valley and beginning here. We've got 2 summers that are working into our phasing plan. We're going to be able to work in those areas that we can't work in while school's in session.
Yeah, I don't know, the temporary modulars at Welsh Valley, that they have it after the summer. Are we pulling those in the summer, or are we going to keep them
I think
for after the summer?
that's a decision we can make.
Depending if we need
when we
it for
get close
administration
to
or
that,
something, yeah,
right.
for swing space.
Right.
Yeah.
But I would think that those could be removed while school's in session without a great deal of
Yeah,
effect
true.
on education.
Yep. What else do you have?
I think that's it.
Okay.
Shifting now to the high schools, I have some additional information related to some of the options we looked at for the high schools. The first thing I'd like to say, and I don't have a slide on this, is that the traffic engineer has drafted up his reports, and I've gone over it with him, and there's nothing new that changed that hasn't already been presented in public. So
his report's going to be identical to everything? Goldie?
yes.
So, at a minimum, I think you should put on the website that, so I think people are looking for a traffic report, or probably troubled that there is none. So I think something should be put on the website, at least alerting people that there are no changes. I mean, like I said, people are waiting for something. And they're not getting it.
I'll review that with the superintendent.
That'd be great, because, I guess this is coming to vote on Tuesday, and the fact that there was that he didn't get his report done in a timely manner is somewhat disconcerting. That the people in the public will have the opportunity to go through that. Monday, I'm sorry. Tuesday, that's right.
You're on the Lmsb.
Yeah.
Okay, so the second thing I wanted to point out here has to do with the options we talked about for renovation of the DAO building in order to provide classrooms for Lower Merion High School. And that is, the question was asked if we needed a 5th science room, and so we have looked at that and determined that we could, in fact, add a 5th science room at this location. It's roughly the size that we need. And we're calling this option 1B, and the cost is roughly $190,000 additional.
So a couple of questions. First, is that consistent with what the cost of the other science rooms are? The 1 through 4?
Yes.
And second, you added as 1B, does that mean that the administration is recommending that we do have 5 science labs in this building? Or is that something that someone at a later point in time is going to have to decide whether they want 4 or 5?
Well, I think through our ongoing conversation about whether or not 4 or 5 would support the needs of the building, and we wrestled with that, whether 4 would be appropriate. So we went back and met with Sean Hughes. We met with Larry McAfoose, who's the department chair of the science department at Lower Merion High School. We met with Arthur Mitchell, who's a supervisor, and Scott Kilpatrick, who's a scheduler, and work through whether or not 4 could meet our needs. And upon review of the schedule, the reality is that 4 was a very conservative number, which did not give enough flexibility in the schedule to play with.
Okay.
So they did recommend that we increase that to 4. That would give a lot
5.
more room.
Increase to
I'm sorry,
5.
increase 4 to 5.
Right.
To allow the schedulers to really be a lot more flexible with the schedule. 4, I was told, would be everything aligned perfectly well. And when you create and schedule, that never happens. That would accommodate that.
Now, in terms of how this process proceeded, I mean, I think I did raise the question at the last meeting. So at what point in time was a decision reached that 5 would be the more appropriate number of classrooms for science?
After you raised it up.
No. So, and I guess because now it's just being brought to us and therefore brought to the public, once again, before our Monday meeting, not our Tuesday meeting. So I guess I'm just, I kind of wish that it had been, if the administration knew at an earlier point in time that the public had been made aware of this, so everybody has up-to-date information. The board and the public would have up-to-date information in terms of costs, because now this is something that, nobody's here. It's being brought to our attention, and for the most part, the public won't know until Monday night, and those are only the ones who are in attendance. Is any of this information then going to be posted on the website to show a revised? I assume you have all the
Yes.
numbers of different projects, and not only be posted, but somehow be highlighted so people know that there's a change in the scope of work for
We would do
the
that.
site.
We would do that.
Yeah, the only point to that, it's just speaking to that point, is it's Thursday. So that means by Thursday afternoon, someone's got to be working on this, because we have Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Nobody's coming in Saturday or Sunday to put stuff up on the website. So, I mean, it's going to have to be done in the next 24,
We will do
12
that.
hours.
We will do that immediately.
I have a question about the science rooms. Right now, they're listed as science rooms. Are they biology labs? Are they chemistry labs? Are they physics labs? Are they combined labs? I mean, chemistry labs have different requirements, and
The assumption here is that they can be used either for biology or chemistry. When we built the new high schools, there's essentially no difference between a room that's outfitted for either one of those. The difference does come in when you get to physics. These are not physics rooms.
so they can be used for biology or chemistry, which means the support rooms for them are going to be outfitted for both biology and chemistry. I mean, so chemistry, I don't know, does biology require a hood? I know chemistry requires a
Yes,
hood.
yeah, each one of these rooms is set up so that there are 6 islands for the students to sit at. Each island has a full set of utilities. There is a teaching station up front for the teacher with a full set of utilities. On one side of the room is a fume hood. That's the classroom. And then the prep room also has a fume hood. That's intended for prep, not for instruction.
Okay.
So let me go back to...
So these are biology/chemistry labs.
Right, so we've identified here a prep room. This is a prep room. In general, keeping with the idea of one prep room for every 2 science rooms. And then we've identified this. This is much smaller over here, but this can be used for storage, or if necessary, as we develop the project, we could try to stick a fume hood in there too.
Okay, and
And all that's included in the cost estimate.
okay, and then if it turns out that the scheduling works for 4 labs, can that, will they then schedule that room for a regular non-science classroom?
There are ways in which we can use classes could meet in those classrooms.
Because I know we have resisted that and in the past, especially with the new buildings. I mean, I know that the new buildings, the science labs are only used for science.
Yes.
And they're not, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm going to assume that they're not used every single, excuse me, every single period.
Period.
So I just want to make sure, I mean, we're talking about accommodating additional numbers. And I
Yes.
want to make sure that it's very clear to whoever schedules that if that room isn't being used for science and you need space, we want to make sure that that room can in fact be used for English or something else.
Absolutely.
And then the second question is, okay, so we're talking right now about updating or renovating this building to accept more students, and we've identified the need for 5 science labs. But we have the same number of physics labs. So theoretically, by the time those kids, that freshman class for which these biology and chemistry labs are being used, get to senior year or even junior year, they're going to need physics. And are we going to be in a situation where we don't have enough physics labs?
I would tell you that equipping a room to be a physics room is a much less intense effort. And so as we get into the design of something like this, we would work out those requirements and figure it out. In the physics room, there is this teacher station up front. The other distinguishing feature that we put in the high schools is we have a steel beam in the ceiling for them to attach experiments to.
The intention is, that, as I understand it, is that the DAO building is going to be used primarily for ninth graders. Physics is a upperclassman, junior, senior level course.
Yes.
So then it would appear to cause logistic issues, because if you're going to make one of these classrooms in this building a physics room, then you have students going back and forth, which according to the proposed scenario, that's not going to happen because it's going to be focused on ninth grade students. So has that factor been considered as part of the analysis, the student flow for the physics, additional phys?
No, it has not. I off the top of my head, I don't think that that's going to be the case, but I'll go back and review that, whether or not that's going to be an implication in terms of in terms of traffic flow with students moving back and forth.
And I guess it'd be a little more problematic because they're just coming back for one class.
Going back from one classroom, yes.
Right. And then the other question I have is, Pat, in terms of time frame, if the option is chosen to renovate this building with the addition of all these science rooms, what is the timing that would need to start? I mean, when do you anticipate that those science rooms are going to be needed or be in place to meet the needs of the children?
I'm going to have to defer an answer to that because we would need to coordinate with the high school staff and relook, where exactly we're going with enrollment. I think if at all possible, we want to wait and see what our enrollment numbers are this coming September of 2014, to see if we can discern whether the trend as predicted is continuing.
And we'll have those numbers in late January, February, as students begin to enroll in courses.
All right, you'll have the selection numbers,
Yeah,
right?
the selection
right. I was
numbers.
thinking of who shows up on the 10th
Yes,
day
yes,
of class,
yes, yes.
but you're right, you're
Okay.
right.
Is this a type of, I would think not because of the cost. What you do, we only need a couple science labs like in year one. I mean, can it be done cost-wise, in efficient cost-wise manner, to do a step-by-step basis, as opposed to full steam ahead and do everything, and they'll maybe find out you don't need everything, or, I mean, I just want to know how, the question I'm going to have
I
is
think the thing,
staging of
right. It's a good question, and obviously you'll have more economy if you did do it all at one time. But I think that the heavy duty is what I would call the infrastructure for the science room, making sure that we have the water, the natural gas, the plumbing.
Everybody.
And the drainage in place for what we need to do in each one of the classrooms. And then, we can make a decision that we're going to outfit X number now, and the remaining classrooms, the infrastructure's in place, and we could do the final outfitting later.
Were these previously science rooms?
Yes.
So at the very least, some of the infrastructure is already there?
Well, it's already there, but as you recall, a lot of it was, 40 to 50-plus years old, so.
Yeah, but I'm thinking, I'm not thinking of the tables and stuff, I'm thinking of the piping underneath. We're not
And
gonna be
that's what I'm
tearing up-
referring to.
Oh, okay, so.
Okay, but
so
let me
you-
point out something. These 4 rooms right here were the science rooms. These had the most infrastructure in them. These had less. But one reason they were done here is because they're right over the gymnasium, thus allowing easy access below the classroom for the plumbing infrastructure that has to be put in.
Okay.
So that's why we went back here first.
Okay.
This would be a little more of a challenge.
So,
This was a science room, but I don't think it was outfitted with all the things that you would see in a chemistry lab.
so the fifth one's more of a challenge because that is not over the gymnasium.
Correct.
So, but the cost that you allocated to it is comparable to these 4, which have easier.
I'll take that back. I need to recheck my numbers before I answer that. We may have added some additional, just because it is more of a challenge to get the plumbing infrastructure in.
Okay, if you can let us know, that'd be great.
I guess, Wagner, this is more a question for you. One of the things that we talked about when we talked about how we would use the DAO building, Mr. Hughes came up and said, well, we make it a 9th grade center. But if that's at year, we're, 6 out. I mean, like, year 1, we're not going to have enough 9th graders to populate an entire 9th grade separate.
No, we would not.
So, and we're not going to have it year 1, year 2, year 3. It's going to be, it's going to be considerably down the road before we're able to populate this building with only 9th graders. And then, I think there, I mean, we're talking 22 total classrooms, which is more than just a 9th grade, I would assume. So, I'm starting to feel like there's a very small window in this plan where this is actually only going to be 9th graders, because leading up to it, we're not going to have, unless we're going to not use classrooms in the main building and just move all the 9th graders here and have a 9th grade here and a 10th through 12th there. I don't know. Do you understand
I
where
don't
I'm
think the
going?
plan was to move all of the 9th graders to the DAO. I think majority of their classes will take place in this building. More specifically, the science classes. I think when you look at the humanities, there's opportunities to use the DAO classrooms as well. So we're looking at an option where half of a freshman's day most likely would be in this facility.
So there's going to be an effort to try and piggyback those classes in a row, but that restraint on the part of a scheduler.
And
Yes.
Yes.
So the reality is, we're going to have kids going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, no matter.
yes,
I mean,
yes.
there's going to be a kid who has their social studies here and their gym there, and then back here for science, and then back over there for art. I mean.
And I think and unfortunately, and I agree that in hindsight, in terms of looking at the number of science classes that we needed, that was a major conversation when we actually had the schedulers in the room with this discussion in terms of the implications of the travel and how that would work and the complexity. And that's when we began to reflect on the additional science classroom because of the movement going back and forth, which unfortunately when we had that conversation, we didn't have the scheduler in the room. We were just going off of numbers saying, well, most likely we only need 4 based on the numbers. But once the schedulers came in, they said, wait a minute, there's a little bit more complexity than just a number of students there. Because, Power School, once you're locked into that, doesn't give you a lot of wiggle room in terms of the schedule. So we will have students going back and forth.
Yeah, and so while we'll try and reduce it, the reality is, we're going to have kids, it's going to be kids back and forth.
I just want to follow up on that.
Yes.
So first of all, my recollection, I think as well as yours, Diane, was that the ninth graders would basically be in this building except for specials, and I think you're debunking that. That's not the case, based upon what you just said. That this would be a ninth grade building. If this were built out per this proposal, ninth graders would spend their days here except for specials. But you're saying that's not really the case, maybe half a day, and students from other grades would be back and forth as well using the general classrooms.
Well, my recollection is that I thought moving forward, we were going to have up to half of the students' schedule most likely would take place in this building.
So not just ninth graders.
Yeah, specials would be very difficult to
Yeah, no, I'm saying, of course,
schedule
specials
here.
are somewhere.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
understand.
yeah.
So, given that there's a lot of back and forth, and we've talked about this before, in terms of safety, so what is our proposal for the entrance, the main entrance from the high school? Pat, I think it's a question for you. I know we plan to staff somebody there, but any other secure, entry like you have for the offices during the day?
Yeah, I don't have a slide handy, but yes, as you come in the door, and it would be the door on the opposite corner of the building, what we refer to as door number 4. That would be the main entrance for students, and we would have a security station there so that any visitors, people who were not on staff would have to check in.
So given the safety report and given that all the secure entrances, we're improving our secure entrances at the various schools, I know we've talked about this before, Dr. McGinley has answered the question, but are we not concerned about just having a free-flowing entrance where students are going outside, back and forth, all the time? We're closing up Walsh Valley from the outside. I'm kind of confused by this.
Well, this was brought up at earlier conversation about the idea about having an open campus and trying very hard to ensure that there's not, so though I understand that there's this conversation around travel time, currently at the high school, we have students who are currently maneuvering from the new building to this building as we speak. Though I understand that moving forward, it's going to be a much larger larger number. We have students who are outside in the cafeteria as well during that time. So there is travel time that is taking place, and there is an open campus. But to the extent in which it heightens or increases security risk,
Very, very significantly. I mean, we can't minimize that and just blow it off that we have students playing in the playing fields. All that. You're talking about isolated people across a large area versus allowing access pretty freely to a major building, which we now propose to populate with half of the students at some point during the day. And you're going to have much more access to the main building because students have to get in and out somehow. And we kind of minimize that. If we believe that's a risk, because we are getting away from this open classroom.
no, I don't want to minimize that at all. So I do agree with you.
So how do we evaluate that professionally?
I was saying, because I did get chastised about when I raised the issue before, and when we designed the building, that there are children who eat outside, and there's Arnold Field. But quite honestly, when that building was designed, it was a different time, a different place, and the number of incidents that have arisen with shootings at high schools and other violence has increased subsequent to that. So we had a safety task force, and we're trying to enclose Welsh Valley more. So to follow what Jerry said, maybe we should explore everything child being outside, whether it be for going back and forth between the two buildings and how we make sure our children are safe, whether they're having lunch outside or participating in phys ed on Arnold Field. So, and by opening up this building with a significant number of students populating it, it does enhance or increase rather the number of students who are outside who could be at risk, may not be, but it just exposes them to that. So,
Sure.
Sure.
And we'll we'll look at that.
It's just, students go home at night. So, we understand it's a world, there are risks in the world, but we have made a concerted effort over the years, at least over the years I've been on the board, to increase the secure nature of our buildings. And just most recently, we went back to a number of schools and improved the access. Ballackinman Middle School is a perfect example. we've switched the office from an internal office to an exterior office so that a visitor during off hours cannot get in without going through a secure, kind of like a double door, secure area. And this is Penn Win too. We've limited the number of access ways from the outside to improve security. And we can go on. But here we're actually taking not just a small step backwards, but a pretty significant step backwards. And I don't think that we've adequately addressed that other than to say we have kids eating outside and we have students, playing on the ball fields after school.
Well, I think the main mitigation factor the superintendent put forward is that we're going to have additional security staff available while students are doing this. And this may in fact mean people being in the area all during the school day, not just for class changes. You're right, the changes we made this summer were aimed at making sure that we could properly screen visitors before they get inside our building. And so in this case, we can accomplish a similar thing by having the security personnel outside.
Yeah, it's just we've created physical barriers, and here we're taking one down. We want a physical barrier. There's the humans. We've always had the human screen pad, but and you're saying that will be adequate here, but we've added a lot of physical barriers, and we will not have that here as planned.
That has not been conversation.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand it.
And I actually have, it dovetails slightly, but if we're talking about using that one entrance for all the passage of students back and forth, that will bottleneck. Plus, so now that's now bottlenecked, plus we have a visitor trying to scoot in the middle of this herd of students coming through.
Diane, if we get to the point where there's enough students that we have a bottleneck, then we'll open up the door on the other side of the gymnasium.
So another opening.
So there could be a second
down
entrance.
here?
Right. Or we'll come up with some other fashion. I mean,
okay,
actually,
but
it's a situation that we'll grow into.
Right, but I guess the point is, again, and this is something that I've raised several times now, is now you're adding passage time to the students, because very little of the classrooms are down this end. So you're going to walk all the way down, you're going to go up, and then you're going to come back. So you're going to add passage time. I think that we should, at the very least, to address the security issue, I think that entrance should not be the entrance where we clear visitors to the school. I think that they should come to this side. If they're going to enter in this building, they should either come to come to a door where the students are not using. So if in fact we are using that front door, right, the closest door to the front entrance of the main high school for the students, then we should identify a different door for visitors. And I think that, I mean, because I can see.
What happens if someone just walks in with children?
Well, that's going to happen anyway, but you'll have a security guard, presumably there. They're going to be able to herd through. I think it's a false sense of security to think they're going to stop at a desk when they can walk in with the herd. So, exactly. So if we establish a different entrance for visitors, it might be a way to
we can take a look at that.
Take a slow nibble at improving the security.
And I guess another question. If you're going in arriving at the cost for this option for the DAO building, do the numbers we have are strictly construction, renovation, construction. They don't include human time. So if there are security staff that is required to be hired to monitor the flow of children, shouldn't that be then added into the cost of this option?
Yeah, if you have two people and they're they'll clearly be over $100,000, and you capitalize that cost, you could be talking $1 million.
And one of the things that has to be done that has not, as far as I have heard, been even started is the change in the bell schedule. And
I'm sorry. So if you can get us numbers in anticipation, I guess, Monday, for what that cost would be for this, for additional staffing and
for the security aspect.
Yeah, please, thank you.
Dedicated to that.
Yeah, dedicated to that, and and obviously it's something that is going to be long-term, as Jerry said. It's not a one-time expense, so I don't know how many years you project it out, but
Well, you can start with one.
you start with 1 year and then multiply.
So, excuse me. In terms of the bell schedule, which I know hasn't been started yet, or at least I don't think so, I'd like to suggest that if there's a study hall or two now, that you borrow those students for a couple of test runs and take a study hall perhaps, or a group of students who have a free and time. Okay, so you're
During study hall, they're so focused on
their schoolwork.
their
I know.
schooling and making sure that they're catching up. I don't know if anyone would be willing to volunteer.
Maybe we could do it as a gym activity. But the idea,
Diane, not enough time.
yeah. Well, well, no, I know we're not. Excuse me. I know we're not going to get this by Monday. I'm not trying. I'm trying in anticipation of working on the schedule. Sure. Because if you're going to change the schedule, you might as well make sure you have enough time for passing. And so, but you don't really know two things. You don't really know unless you time it how long it's going to take to walk from point A to point B. And you don't really know until you get a sense of a mass of kids. So let's say you have 20 or 30 kids try and enter through one door and see how that affects the timing of it. I mean, I think, you know, I think we need to be realistic about how the passing time is going to affect. Yeah. That was one, you know, Wagner, you were in the old building, so you know, before we tore down the old building, it was 7 minutes, some of the passing time. That
And then some. Yeah.
Yeah, and that affected the education. It affected the ability of the teacher to start a lesson on time. It increased anxiety levels in the students because, gosh, I got to get there. I have a test. And so I think we need to have a realistic idea of what that time is and plan for it accordingly.
And I appreciate the talents of our administration, but when we designed the two high schools, we retained the services, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but an educational consultant who helped indicate that, you know, the number of classrooms we needed and where they should be. And, you know, perhaps that may be a good idea for to assist in helping with the flow, that to bring on an educational consultant so they can decide which room should be where to help improve whatever student flow is the student flow that's going to occur when all the additional students arrive here. Instead of just keeping it the way it is, maybe you can improve it by moving certain classrooms around in certain parts of the building and make it somewhat better.
We'll look at that. Okay.
So while we're on educational impact of these issues, during redistricting, we had talked about, you know, the construction of the new high schools. We had talked about the concept of cultural isolation. And that was one element, one factor of a number of factors that was used to determine, you know, which way we went.
Talk to me a little bit about cultural isolation.
It was a factor that Dr. McGinley brought up, and we're kind of throwing that all by the wayside without any discussion about it. Can you get back to us on that as well?
Oh, absolutely. I'll do that.
So, no, so I continue to request, you know, that I ask, how do we talk about costs when we don't have the total picture, which includes parking and transportation, whether it be bus parking, staff parking. And I know we saw numbers from our transportation consultant that suggested we're very close on numbers in terms of needs if we build the addition at Harriton. So it's expensive. If you look at the numbers, if you can go to the slide, Pat, that shows the relative cost of one versus the other for the classrooms. I don't know if you've gotten there yet.
Okay, this is just an extract, but
Yeah.
what I've done here is, this is where I've combined this this option. So looking at classrooms, again, these numbers have not changed from the last time. These numbers have not changed from the last time you saw them. That's scenario one, which is the status quo. Scenario two is implement choice, and the students in the choice area go 50% to each high school. And then this is the scenario three, where we implement choice, and the students in the choice area go 60% to Lower Merion, 40% to Harriton. And what I've done here is add in this number with the fifth science room. And now this number does include the canopy cost.
Yeah. But none of these costs include the impact of a new property for bus parking, staff parking. It doesn't include the cost if we do have to add that, the additional cost if it's a remote site and not in the district. And if one of these scenarios, for instance, the scenario where you add the classrooms at Harriton works without adding another lot, these numbers, the comparisons, if you go back to the comparison of the DAO versus, you can put that slide up.
This one?
So if you look at that, if you look at the permanent classroom, since we don't seem to favor temporary classrooms anywhere anymore. So if you look at 10.5 versus, 8.9.
Well, that's a combination.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think scenario 3 is the one.
Oh, scenario 3, yeah, scenario 3.
It's 5-4.
So, Pat, this is the complete build out of the DAO?
Yes.
Okay. And then if you build out Harriton, where's that? Show that as well. So it's 5-4.
It's here in scenario one.
Yeah. So if you look at the two extremes, 5-4 versus 10-5, on the face of it, it clearly favors by several $1 million the scenario of building out the DAO. But what it doesn't include is the cost of buying an additional property, building out that property, and staffing that property, and driving to and fro that property if that is a remote property from the district, which it's likely to be given our past
And
experiences.
this property you're referring to would be for parking buses?
Buses and staff and whatever we need it for, because you're driving buses away from Lower Merion, and I don't see how we make this decision in a vacuum without those numbers as well. It's like saying I'm going to build a house but without a roof. Well, you wouldn't do that.
And Jerry, you're
Yeah.
focused on the gross numbers, so I guess it's the special meeting, the communications meeting, that's what it was called. The issue of, I personally believe it's not the gross
Excuse me,
dollars.
Do you mean the communications meeting where the high school expansion?
Yeah, that
was
meeting.
discussed?
Yeah. It was advertised as communication. So as one of the issues that I did raise was, don't focus on the gross dollars. I mean, they're significant, it's $5 million, but the impact to our taxpayers of going with one option to the other based on how Mr. Vic is going to implement the integrate the debt service into the budget. And you're talking about, I think, I don't have my notes in front of me, but I think it was around $3 to $4 a year additional tax.
That's just.
For the delta,
For the capital, that didn't include the operating.
No, just the 10 million and the versus the I guess the 5.6 million now, or 5 point, whatever it was, 5.4. So if the impact, if you're going to talk fiscal responsibility, focus on how it's going to impact us, the taxpayers. And it was only a couple dollars. So, I guess what I'm saying, in terms of dollars, the gross cost should not be the determining factor. If you should focus on the impact to the taxes, and that's going to be nominal. So regardless of which option, it's going to cost $3 to $4 more to go with the more expensive of the two. That's all.
I don't agree with that.
Well, Jerry, it's
No,
correct.
I understand. I don't agree with
Okay. And the other thing I want to raise is, one thing that has not been presented to us is well, let me back off. There are two types of assets. There are tangible assets, which, like, to me, is the hard cost, the buildings, but there's also intangible assets. And I interpret that for this project is the impact to the students. Which of the two options will deliver the educational programming with less interference? So we never really had any type of presentation given to us by the administration saying, how will the educational programming look at Harriton if we do the addition versus how will it look if we have the DAO, where students going back and forth. children trying to get to classes from one building to the other, having the ninth graders somewhat isolated in a different building. I don't think you have that in Howardton right now. And so I would love to know, because we only heard about what you're going to do here, but we never really heard, if you are to go with the Howardton option, how the educational programming would be affected, and how it would be delivered with that new addition. What students, would you have to isolate a group of students just to utilize that? I don't think so.
No.
So I think that's a critical variable in making any decision. Numbers are important, I agree with that, but also the well-being of the children and the ability to effectively deliver educational programming and the least amount of interference is also critical, in some ways maybe more critical. So I would like to have some sense, the administration's position in terms of which would be a better flow for the students, which would be more beneficial or least disruptive.
Okay.
Pat, again, looking at the numbers, and I'm looking at this page.
Right.
So, how many classrooms do we have currently in this building that would require minimal to no renovation? We have the room that's used for meetings now, which is a double room.
264 A and B, yes.
All right, so that's
Right.
2 rooms there. We have the rooms that are used for the after-school program, the elementary after-school program, right?
Yes.
So how many of those? There's
The
2?
major cost we're talking about here is the new HVAC. So the question is how long you can use a classroom without upgrading the HVAC. And then, of course, we have the group restroom on the 3rd floor. So what we've presented earlier is that with minimal upgrades, we could use all those rooms on the 2nd floor. We could move some administrative offices around and use the rooms along this corridor. But that when we reach the point we need more than that, and we have to go to the 3rd floor, that's when we would need to do that.
I understand.
renovation.
That's not my question. My question is, how many do we have right now? If tomorrow 100 kids more
We have 4 right here, and we have 2 on the 1st floor, so that would be 6.
So we have 6 right now that,
Right.
if tomorrow we needed them, we could use them, and they'd be adequate.
Yes.
Not the HVAC piece notwithstanding. I mean,
Correct.
It's good enough that they can work in
Correct.
that room. Okay, so we have 6. Okay, thank you.
You all refresh?
Yeah. Pat, in terms of critical timeline, given the population coming, I mean, part of the problem here is we've, and I'm repeating what I've said before, is we've phrased this whole inquiry as do we expand the walk zone versus how do we accommodate the incoming student body that's coming to the high schools down the road. Given the size of the high schools now and the populations as they stand today, when do we have to start implement? When would we have to have a full building here built out if we choose the DAO as the preferred approach?
Okay, I'm going to have to refer to my notes and the enrollment projections. Yeah, I'm not sure I have the right
All right, Pat,
information with me.
I don't put you in the spot. You can
Okay.
get back to us.
Okay.
You any?
I have a question, not about this option, but during the course of the meetings, and I think even Jerry raised it about the additional buses. Is there I'm trying to think about the right, like, we've been told that over time, we're going to need to add additional buses to our fleet, which in part necessitates the need for possibly off-site location of the buses. Is there a timetable in terms of when you anticipate more buses are going to need to be added? I mean, is there like a 3-4 year projection in terms of the expansion of that fleet?
Well, as you know, we added 4 buses this past year. So we have done a projection. It was in the operating cost estimates given to you, I think it was about a year ago, based on the enrollment projections. But to answer your question specifically, I think I'm going to have to go back and check. We're looking at, obviously we have all the buses parked at the 2 high schools we're going to be able to park. So the only other location is at Madison Ford Road. So we've been able to squeeze those 4 buses in there. I've asked the staff there to look at, like Diane has mentioned earlier, some more creative ways to park. I'm not optimistic, but if we had to add a couple of buses in the next year or 2, we may be able to accommodate that at Madison Ford Road.
Eventually, there's a limit where we run out of space.
Right.
It's a finite property.
And also in terms of costs, when we talked about the structured parking, the cost that was provided to us for Harridan was for an 82 spot parking, I'll call it garage or structure. And then it was determined that based on the study done by Mr. begins with a T.
Tavani.
Thank you, Tavani. That we only really needed 56, so we didn't need as large a structure. And then subsequent discussion where there are alternative locations where vehicles could be put, I think 17 and 19 roughly. So then it would shrink the structure even smaller. So has any revised cost estimate for a parking structure been prepared, which we would then be able to factor into our analysis?
No, but that's something we can follow up on.
By Monday?
And again, if the structure at that point is only for 50 cars, that's to comply with code. And have we considered actually not complying with code and going to the township for a variance and saving millions of dollars for a structure?
I believe the analysis was, and where we talked about future additional parking deficit, was based on a what I'll refer to as an empirical analysis based on what we see on the site. It's well under what code requirement is. And yes, we would do that.
Yeah, I apologize, I forgot that. But given, so that's based upon our observed usage by Frank Devani, our transportation consultant. But, you know, if we needed one spot, I wouldn't want to build a $2 million garage. So it's not one spot, it's 50 spots. And I wonder at what point is the breaking point. If we need 500 spots, we're going to build the structure. It's a pretty low number, and we don't hit our peak for 7 or 8 years of population. I'd hate to commit to something like that now. And basically, that's what we're doing. We're making a decision for 7 or 8 years from now because we want to rush this decision out now versus when we should be doing it at a later time. And we're going to commit a lot of dollars that we might not need down the road. My opinion.
Wagner, do you have a sense, have you guys discussed what the tipping point is for moving students out of, or expanding students out of the actual Lower Merion building? I mean, I know we're talking about Harrington is 14, we've 1,400, we talked that that's a firm number, which suggests that Lower Merion is 1,400. So as soon as the numbers tip over 1,400, rooms will start to need rooms in this building. But is that firm? I mean, because I know, again, I've raised this before. When we first opened Lower Merion High School, it was, I'm going to say 1469 or 1470, somewhere around there. And I don't, other than using this building for PE, which was always the plan, I don't think they had classes in here. I could be mistaken by that.
No, they didn't.
So clearly, that building can accommodate 1,450, maybe. Do we have a sense, or have you spoken to the schedulers about what their tipping point number is?
I have to go back to, and I've been trying to find as we're having these conversation statements, the last presentation, I believe 1,400 was the tipping point with regards to making sure we maintain our same level of programming so that we're not accommodating any additional rooms that were facilitated for other uses, like the DPCs or things of that particular nature. So because of that, and trying to maintain the same type of instructional programs we've offered, that 1,400 is the point where we would be using the building. But I'll verify that because I have to check the PowerPoint presentation.
Because, I mean, I know that that's a number, but I'm not sure how scientific that number was determined. And
What is DPC? Sorry.
Departmental Planning Centers.
Departmental Planning Center were the teachers for each department.
And, just as an FYI, when the buildings were built, you'll notice those departmental planning centers are classroom size. And they were built that way to be able to be used as additional classrooms should we find ourselves in a position where we're in an enrollment higher than we were planning for. So those rooms are that size with intention. So I know that I've spoken to a couple of teachers and they have really come to love that
Yes.
space, and they use it not only for planning but for working with students. I mean, it's a valuable space.
Yes.
I don't I don't question that. But if we're talking about spending millions of dollars for a bubble that might last 2 or 3 years, and because, we do only go out to 21, 22. At some point, the numbers have to come back down. It's just, it's just impossible for them
Okay, so
only
that's
to
what your
go up.
message was about.
So, we are talking about a bubble.
I know we did it.
Maybe
Or we at least
instead
did a
of,
draft.
Sorry, Pat, your mic is still on.
thanks. Instead of renting or using portables, this could be another temporary solution.
Do you have a sense how crowded the high school the Lower Merion High School currently is? Because I always hate when someone says, people have told me, but I've heard that some people feel the sense that the school is crowded at this point.
I don't have a sense of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Suba, you good? Any questions from the public? Comments? State your name and where you live, please.
Hi, my name is Susan Guthrie. I live in Marion Station. So I have a number of points. I'll try to move through them quickly. To Mr. Friedlander's point about how crowded the building is, I know someone whose child is currently in a study hall that's in the back of the band room. I understand the band's not meeting, but students come in and practice. Doesn't seem to me to be a very conducive environment for a study hall. Also, I've heard stories of the students sitting on the floor during lunch for certain of the lunches because there's no seating available in the cafeteria. So I don't know if they're true. I'm just throwing them out there. Maybe they're folklore, urban myth, urban legend, whatever. But just bringing them to your attention. The study hall piece I do believe to be true. But I was wondering if we could get a copy of the actual parking report on the website by today. There's only the presentation that was made to
Yeah,
the
we're
board.
not going to have it available today.
When would that be available?
I'm sure we could get it available Monday.
Isn't the vote on Monday?
Pat, why not till Monday?
You wanted to blame the traffic engineer. He had his report done, okay? It wasn't reviewed by me because I was on vacation. I reviewed it this week. He is making some additional adjustments. We could possibly have it up at the end of the day Friday.
Yeah, that would be great. Better than Monday. Thanks.
Thank you. And then also, I was just wondering if we could have this meeting posted on the website by the end of business Friday, just because Usually there's been a delay. I understand that it takes a while to get it up. I'm just asking if it'd be possible to expedite this one so that people have a chance. There was a great discussion, and it'd be helpful if people could see it before the vote on Monday. I also just wanted to comment that obviously we're meeting here today and talking about some very important issues that will be just voted on Monday. And I've been somewhat disappointed at the lack of publicity to the parents and the community regarding the importance of the meeting on Monday. And I have found, my children attend 2 different schools. I have routinely looked at the blasts that go out to the parents, and I've seen nothing in those blasts regarding the meeting on Monday. So I beg you, have the communications department send out a district-wide blast to the parents informing them of this meeting on Monday. And then just very quickly, Jerry, thank you very much for all the work that you've done. I know this is your last Facilities Committee meeting. Thank you for all your work over the years. You've done a great job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for asking all the hard questions and promoting the transparency in the discussion. I really appreciate it. And you and Gary will hear more at the meeting on Monday, but this is your meeting, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Thank you, everybody, for your time, and see you Monday night. Gary, there's a
Finance Committee tomorrow at 8 to review the audit.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Jerry.